everybody. Great to see so many new faces and familiar faces. Welcome to Missoula Invest Health Summit, Building a Healthier Missoula, Promoting Health Equity for All. And since the title of the summit is about as long as the summit itself, we're going to get started. I'm Susan Hay-Patrick, CEO of United Way of Missoula County and a proud member of the Missoula Invest Health team, and really honored to be your MC today. They gave me very few instructions, but one of them is to do with turning off your cell phones and telling you that the bathrooms are out the door and kind of that way. So now I can just sit down and my work is done. Let's see. I want to first introduce the other members of the Missoula Invest Health team. So colleagues, please stand and wave when I call your name. So first I want to introduce an original member of the team who started out with us but had to leave when she took another position, April Pickering, who's here with us today. April's now Director of Population Health and Government Programs for Community Medical Center. She made important contributions to the early stages of our work, and she continues to follow our work with interest and support. Current members of the team, Kaya Peterson, Assistant Director of NeighborWorks Montana, Laval Means, Planning Division Manager for the Development Services Office for the City of Missoula, Mary Hutton, Regional Director of Community Benefit and Care Transitions at Providence St. Patrick Hospital. Where are you? Stand up over there. Everybody's got such great titles, right? And last but far, Karen, no, I'm going to talk about Karen in a minute. Last but far from least, our fearless leader, Lisa Biskevich, Health Promotion Supervisor for the Missoula City County Health Department. While the whole team, along with Karen Sippy, our official tree hugger, Executive Director of Trees for Missoula, and the amazing Timmy Lyon from the Health Department. Is she running? She's running around. Okay, she's, I keep telling her, I keep scaring you by saying she'll be very happy when I steal her and she comes to work at United Way. Everybody that I just named was part of the summit planning team, but the agenda in no small part is reflective of the extraordinary vision that Lisa Biskevich has for our community. I'm getting a little verklempt. And what a community it is. As you all know, Missoula is routinely voted best of in many categories, whether it's our microbreweries, our mountains, or our marathon. We are recognized locally, regionally, nationally, and even internationally as a great place to live, work, and play. And we're very proud of that. But the truth is, too many of our neighbors are struggling. In terms of health disparities alone, too many of our neighbors living in our lowest wealth neighborhoods have higher rates of obesity, depression, asthma, and other issues. Their housing is generally worse and more precarious. Parks, lighting, and sidewalks aren't the same as in wealthier areas of Missoula. There are fewer gathering places, fewer grocery stores. We just got word yesterday that the Missoula Food Co-op is closing its doors permanently, meaning that people who take advantage of the double SNAP benefits program have one fewer option to provide fresh fruits and vegetables for their families at a geographically convenient location. There's more persistent generational poverty in our poorer neighborhoods. Economic hard times hit those residents disproportionately, and economic good times often pass many of them by. The good news out of that gloomy scenario is that we think we can do some things to change all that. In 2016, Missoula was one of 50 mid-sized cities in 31 states that received a $60,000 planning grant from Invest Health, an initiative of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Reinvestment Fund. The goal of this groundbreaking initiative is to transform the way that city leaders work together to help low-income communities thrive, with specific attention to community features that drive health. Things like access to safe and affordable housing, places to play and exercise, and quality jobs. Recipients of the grant were required to form 5-member teams, including representatives from the public sector, community development, and an anchor institution, preferably academic or health-related. Providence St. Patrick Hospital serves as the anchor institution for the Missoula Invest Health grant. And we wanted to hear from residents, the experts on their own lives, about conditions in their neighborhoods. We did neighborhood walkabouts, we met with neighborhood councils, several hundred local residents responded to a survey. You'll have the chance to hear from some of our residents today too on our panel. You'll see that they know what works in terms of improving their neighborhoods. So our goals for today, and we're going to talk about the agenda and review your packet. We want to help you deepen your understanding of health equity, network with others from across the community, join efforts to support health and well-being in Missoula, and learn what works for health in Missoula. So in your packet, you have sort of an overview of Invest Health, both locally and nationally. Obviously, you have an agenda. Over a concept paper about what health equity is, and also talking about the social determinants of health. There's some graph that I don't really understand what that's about. Is that for the breakout sessions? Okay. Sort of something that you apparently will be filling out during the breakout session. And then, just because we want you to make paper airplanes or do something, you have a blank piece of paper, which I assume is for taking notes. Yes? Okay, good. My work is done. So, it is now my privilege to introduce our mayor, Missoula native John Engen, recently reelected to his 4th term. But don't come up yet, because I got a lot to say. John was born. John has been a tireless advocate of the work of the Invest Health team. He understood from the get-go the significance of a grant, this highly competitive grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for Community Health Advancement. And he not only encouraged us to apply, he has championed our efforts ever since. You'll hear later in our program about sidewalks. John Engen understands the role of sidewalks in community health. Don't come over yet. Wait, bear with me. So much paperwork up here. But first, not long ago, under John's leadership, Missoula adopted a comprehensive growth policy that represents a shift in planning from single-issue problem solving focused on automobile-centric suburban development toward a multifaceted approach of balancing growth with the services and qualities that make Missoula healthier and sustainable. The folks who engaged in the process of developing the growth policy envisioned Missoula's future to include a healthy environment, a high quality of life, and a community-oriented city that provides good housing, employment, and social services for all budget and lifestyle needs. All budget and lifestyle needs. Those folks knew, and our Invest Health team knows, that improving community health and wellness requires taking a look at how we grow with an emphasis on how well we grow. A goal of the growth policy is to, quote, encourage the close connection between development patterns, community infrastructure, and the environment, as well as the importance of a healthy environment to our sense of social, economic, and physical well-being. This means looking at the built environment and the demographics of our growing community through a lens that focuses on improving community connectivity, accessibility, and affordability. No one better understands this than our mayor. So please join me in welcoming John Engen.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much. Lovely to see all of you this morning. Fantastic to have a microphone this early, and I don't intend to relinquish it anytime soon. Just want to cover some foundational stuff. I've got about 76 slides around municipal budgeting that I think will help inform the conversation this morning. And then we'll move into a Q&A and some workshopping around that budget. And then there's other stuff, I think, happening, Jana. Yeah, none of that is true, ladies and gentlemen. I will be mercifully brief. So if you listen to public radio, as I did this morning, whether you're walking, riding your bicycle, or driving, your instinct, having listened to that programming, is to find the nearest cliff. But the reason we don't go there is because a room like this in Missoula, Montana gets filled with people who want to change the world. And the world gets changed one person, one group, one city at a time. This is where stuff is happening. Long time ago, people came to the fire. They realized that they couldn't go it alone, and only through cooperation and the spirit of compassion and neighborliness and love, they can get stuff done. And that's what happens in this room, and that's what happens over and over again in our community. Fundamentally, what we've done here is we've made plans and we've made a commitment to folks who may not even know that we've made that commitment. Folks who are never going to come to a Missoula City Council meeting because they don't think it's going to make a difference. Folks who likely aren't going to call my office to complain about a pothole because their life is filled with more significant potholes than the ones that are in the street. And the fact of the matter is that, again, when we keep those folks top of mind, when we keep that word all in our heads, we make a difference. So everything we're doing here goes through a filter of equity. Everything we do has to do with, does this serve the most, the best? Everything we do. And when that's your foundation, it's kind of hard to go wrong. So this morning, you all get to be inspired. You get to be re-energized. You get to learn about the things that this community is doing, that other communities are doing, that move the needle, as they say, in the right direction. And there's not a soul in this room who's going to rest until everyone is taken care of. Okay? And that's pretty remarkable. So I thank you all for being here this morning, for making the investment, because it really is an investment. Your time, your energy, your brains, your talent, all pay dividends over the long haul. Lives get better because you commit to making them get better, and I'm grateful for that. I'm highly scripted this morning, which means I have to... Oh, Kale has a fabulous lunch special, ladies and gentlemen. So it is my duty, among other things this morning, to introduce our keynote speaker. I have notes that I don't forget. That's not what my thing says. No, my note says welcome attendees and introduce Jana.
Okay, I don't want to fight with you in public, but remember yesterday when I said...
I don't know. That was at our meeting yesterday. That was yesterday, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I just step away from the microphone with gratitude and humility. Thank you.
Highly scripted or impossible to script, I think is what you meant to say.
Thank you so much, John. And something that you said just reminded me, when I look out in the room, I see business people, educational leaders, nonprofit leaders, funders, health department people. It's really, really inspiring. And thank you for being such soldiers of good fortune on behalf of your community. City council people, county commissioners. That it's really, really very gratifying, and we are so appreciative of your time today. Our Invest Health team, I like to think that we are the teacher's pets at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, because they do follow. First of all, it's the most overly staffed grant I've ever been a part of. We have somebody who calls us weekly. I call her our team therapist, but that's not what she calls herself. We have opportunities for networking. We've traveled a lot to see what's working in other cities. We have national gatherings, pod convenings, which sounds really scary, but really means that it's smaller groups of grantees who meet together in other cities to find out what's working. And we were selected to do a TED Talk at our last national gathering in Phoenix in June, because the Robert Wood Johnson Invest Health team was so impressed by our work in Missoula. And we thought it provided a good overview of our activities and progress to date. So without further ado, our fearless team leader, Lisa Biskevich.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, I'm connected. Can everybody hear me? Okay, awesome. So this was really cool to take to Phoenix and share with 49 other cities what Missoula, Montana is about. So you guys are going to know a little bit about this. You're going to have a little more insight than people that we presented to. But this is our Little Data Goes a Long Way story. This will give you a snapshot of our 18-month journey of this grant and build upon what Susan and the mayor shared with us. So here's our city. It's funny when I present this nationally, all those people think that M is a mountain. And I have to say, no, that's really a foothill, but it's pretty cool, huh? So what we know in Missoula is that we love our foothills that surround the valley, and that we know that we have people that are doing pretty well in our community and are living above the poverty line. But then we also know that we have pockets of poverty in our neighborhood and people that are living in not such healthy conditions. So we have some health disparities happening right out this door, right down the street in our neighborhoods in Missoula. So here's our journey in a nutshell. So we started in 2016. We were tickled when we received the grant from the Robert Wood Johnson. There was about 300 applications, so we were one of 50. So we're pretty proud of ourselves for being able to pull this off. So we were tickled, and we jumped out the door with our team that Susan introduced to you earlier. And really, I like to explain to people, this is a connection between community development and community health. And we all knew each other, but we were never at the same table. So this planning grant really provided the opportunity for us to sit at the table and start putting the pieces together about what it would take to build a healthier Missoula. So the first question we had was, what's going on in these neighborhoods where we're finding some high disparities of mental health and obesity rates in our three lowest wealth neighborhoods, which are Franklin Fort, Northside, Westside, and River Road. So we held walkabouts with leadership teams, which is a really great system that we have within the city of Missoula that engages neighborhood residents. We have a couple panelists that will be sharing their stories with you. But we went through and basically had walking focus groups and learned about the neighborhoods and what was happening as far as barriers to health as well as assets to health. And then we did a survey where we mailed them home, asking open-ended questions about their healthy choices. Are they the easy choices in their neighborhoods or not? And then we applied for a grant, basically telling the story of showing poor health outcomes, a lack of investment, generational poverty, and a lack of infrastructure. And this is the quick story. So what did we know? We knew, So we knew, oh yeah, way better. I was like getting a crick in my neck there. So we drilled down through a policy map. And what Policy Map is a tool that we use through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and at the Health Department. And we're able to look at census tract data, neighborhood level data. And so what we knew that here's the disparities that we saw. 26% of adults were obese compared to 20% citywide, 20% poor mental health compared to 23% citywide, and missing sidewalks was a huge issue. So what we know, here's a map that we created, Missoula Community Health Map. This map is available for the public to use through the Missoula City County Health Department website. And so what we were able to do is layer with our GIS department and the city of Missoula and look at the missing sidewalks, which is the red area, and then the green sidewalks, the existing sidewalks. And so you can see the disparity of poverty with missing sidewalks. Same with childhood obesity. So we're seeing a trend here, right? Poor health outcomes, lack of infrastructure. And research knows is that if you have access to low-cost ways to move your body, to turn on your brain and bodies, that you will lead a healthier life. And there's the adult obesity map. Depression. So we told this story through the CDB. So that was one piece of our data component. The second one is that we talked to the residents. We held walkabouts. We had anywhere from probably 7 to 12 people attend and walked around the neighborhoods and really understood what existed in their neighborhood from bird's eye or from a ground level view of residents' engagement. And it's like, why am I walking down this trail and the lights are gone now? Like, why can't we have lights all the way to the end of the trail, for example? So here's some pictures of the walkabouts showing lack of infrastructure and connectivity. And then we did a follow-up survey to learn more information about what it looked like to make healthy choices in their neighborhood. And Susan, can you hold up one of our neighborhood reports? If you want to know more about what, they're in that big stack right there. We have a comprehensive neighborhood report that's available on the website, or I have a few copies here if you're a data geek and want to look and see what we learned. But here's it in a nutshell. All the neighborhoods said, we want more sidewalks. And so, which I thought was very interesting that, we didn't plant that seed, that they said that that was really important to them. And then it was better street lighting, trail access, sports fields, community center. And so we took our case to apply for a CDBG grant that would affect 20,000 residents in the West Side and Franklin to Fort neighborhood. And we picked blocks that would connect people to services like schools, grocery stores, churches, basically neighborhood hubs. And I want to give kudos to the City of Missoula and MPO in creating this partnership and applying for this grant, and Public Works. And then we said, we need more investment in these neighborhoods now. And Mayor Ingen supported this very strongly with a nice letter of support and invested the sidewalk subsidy match at a tune of about $560,000. And it's very complex about how we fund sidewalks in our community, but basically in a nutshell, we know that we need to catch up with sidewalk infrastructure. And so one mechanism that was created many years ago was to do a cost share with a homeowner with a sidewalk subsidy through the City of Missoula. But that's not going to work in these neighborhoods because these people are poor, persistent poverty. Over 20% of these people live below the poverty level for over 30 years. So they can't afford any kind of match whatsoever. So I was just really tickled about this. And then right after that, City Council was like, wow, we have some health disparities and lack of infrastructure going on. Maybe we should relook at our sidewalks and see how we can build them better. And so now that's segued into a facilities pedestrian master plan. Right, Aaron? So, and what was the result? $820,000 of sidewalks. Yay, Missoula. I got a standing ovation for this in Phoenix. It's like it worked. You guys should be tickled. And what blew my mind is that dollar amount is for a mile of sidewalk. I can't get over how expensive infrastructure is. But if you build it, they will come. So Invest Health really gave us the opportunity to build on our case, get out there and engage. This is a picture of our team working with the residents and learning and studying their neighborhood. You're taking notes, I can tell. This is a gravel road in one neighborhood. I mean, it's amazing the disconnectivity that we have out there that still exists. So that makes it really hard for people that are ADA accessible, that maybe have balance issues. I mean, it's just a whole variety of things. You just be observant out there about people using sidewalks. And where they are, people use them. If they're not there, you don't usually see people walking down the middle of the road. And if you do, they're risk takers. So we wanted to share this story with you because the summit is a result of this. And so we're trying to cross-pollinate what we have learned with the CDBG grant and the power of the story of the people and the health disparities and what we can do to work better together to weave the housing, active transportation, urban forestry, food, and recreation into building a healthier Missoula for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. It really was exciting to show that in Phoenix to all these other cities and talk about Missoula. And we had great municipal pride that day. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Jana West Kowalski. She is a community coach at County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, CHR&R, a collaboration of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute, UWPHI. I love the acronyms in our work, right? Jana's role is to provide strategic guidance to communities that want to put county health rankings into action for community health improvement. She lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, where she has over 20 years of public health experience. Prior to joining CHR&R, she was responsible for public health workforce development in the Center for Public Health Practice at the Colorado School of Public Health. This role included providing training, technical assistance, and consultation to public health professionals, as well as teaching foundations of public health practice for graduate students. Jana also spent 9 years working in local public health. She managed a team that coordinated chronic disease and tobacco prevention and control initiatives. She remains passionate about local public health and currently serves on the Larimer County Board of Health. She also previously served as an instructor at Colorado State University in the Health and Exercise Science Department. Jana received her master's from Oregon State University's College of Public Health and Health and Human Sciences, and a Bachelor of Science from Colorado State University. And we are just delighted to have you with us here today. So please welcome Jana West Kowalski.
All right. Good morning, Missoula. Oh my gosh, it's so great to be here. I have had the good fortune of working with a small team of folks from Missoula for the past year under the leadership of Kaya Peterson. And my experience with them was similar to what I experienced last night with the Invest Health team, and that is that you all have a lot of really smart, compassionate people that are committed to making a positive difference in Missoula. So I'm delighted to be part of your efforts today. I'm glad that Susan mentioned my teaching experience, because the podium is not my thing, and I like to walk around, and I think that this room is small enough too that we can have some conversation, and Lavelle will rip me off the floor if I go too long. So Susan mentioned that County Health Rankings and Roadmaps is a collaboration between the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. The majority of my team is in Madison at the university, and then there are a handful of us around the country. So I'm based in Colorado and have had a lot of opportunities to work in Montana in this role, as well as in my previous role with the School of Public Health. And when I left yesterday, I said to my husband, you know I'm going to want to move to Missoula when I come back. So after hearing your mayor's opening this morning, I was like, wow, I really want to move to Missoula. This is great. You all have real, you are so well poised to take your good work to that next level. And so I'm delighted to be part of it today. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation challenges all of us in our communities to create a culture of health as is defined on this slide. So I'll give you a second to read that. And I just invite you today, and actually as you continue this journey after today, to reflect on what Lisa just presented. She did such a nice job of showing the contrast of what do the environments look like that create those conditions for a culture of health. And what do those environments look like where there's a lack of attention? It's been under-resourced for a while. And what will it take to create a culture of health for everyone in Missoula? So I'm going to do 3 things today, hopefully, to support your efforts in creating a culture of health. First, I'm going to define health from the perspective of a community lens. Secondly, I want to illustrate, although Lisa's already done it really well, that where we live, learn, work, and play really matters to our health. And then finally, because I worked at the local level for so long and I know how important and how hard the work is, I want to leave you with some practical tools and resources that are available to you through County Health Rankings and Roadmaps at no cost because of funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So define health, show that where we live, learn, work, and play matters to our health, and then finally leave you with some practical tools and guidance. Sound good? Awesome. Okay, so just to get a sense of who's in the room, I'd like to know how familiar you are with County Health Rankings and Roadmaps. So when I read the statement that's true for you, give me a little wave. So if you are aware of and or you use County Health Rankings, give me a wave. Okay, about a quarter of you. How about if you're aware of and you use our Action Center? Okay, just a few of you. So you're going to leave with some new resources. Yay. And how about what works for health? Okay, good. And then this is all new. Oh, I'm in the right room. Okay, good, good. So hopefully you all will leave with some new information, but more importantly, some useful information that you can implement after I'm gone. So my colleagues accuse me of being too academic. And I was like, oh, don't put in too many models, or what John said, I won't use the 77 budget slides. But this is our theory of change, and I decided to keep it in because I think it's really parallel to what you all are doing today. So our data and science team gathers data from a number of population health data sources and then packages it into a county health ranking or a data snapshot that goes out every year. And our hope from those rankings is to generate media attention, to be somewhat provocative. We're really happy when mayors from around the country call and are angry and say, you know, what is going on with these rankings? Because it opens the door to be a call to action. And we have indeed seen that happen. So our hope is then that community leaders use the report, pull broader community engagement together, and then find evidence-informed strategies that will ultimately improve health outcomes. And I see you all doing that today. You know, you've got your media attention is the Invest Health team getting you all here. You've got this great report about these 3 neighborhoods. And now you're all here, and you get to take what you're already doing to that next level. Look at what are some evidence-informed strategies that are already in place that we can build on, that we can better coordinate to improve health for everyone in Missoula. So this is our picture of health. This is our definition of health through the community lens. And I think this is small enough that we can have this room is small enough we can have some conversation. I'm going to give you just a second to look at this, and then I want to ask you what it means to you and what stands out for you. So what do you see in here? As you see this picture of health, what is it saying to you? Very comprehensive. Lots of things influence health. Yeah, what else? Yeah, those social and economic factors and health behaviors are most impactful. I saw a hand here.
Some of these areas are a little bit more difficult to put numbers on, right?
Yes, yes. This is complex, difficult work. Anything? Yeah.
I'd say there's a lot of interrelationships between these factors.
Yeah, lots of intersection between these factors. Yeah, the clinical care has less of an impact than we might think. And the clinical folks, I'm looking at Mary in the room, know that when patients come to your hospital or come to your clinic, there's a lot that's already going on outside of the four walls of your clinic that are influencing health. Good. Gosh, I don't know that I need to be here. You all get this. Yeah, a couple more comments. Yeah. Okay, I'll explain it. Yeah.
It seems like we're succeeding locally, but kind of failing at the state and federal level.
Yeah. We could have a long conversation about that, couldn't we? Let's stay focused on what we control about local. Okay. So to comment here, so what this model is saying is that the programs, the policies, the systems changes, the changes to your environment that are part of your growth plan, that are part of your public health work, influence health factors. They influence things like health behaviors, clinical care, social and economic factors, and the physical environment. Those health factors then in turn influence health outcomes, and we define that as how long and how well you live. So Lisa actually painted a great story of, when you have sidewalks, which actually can fall under both of these factors, people they have the opportunity to move more, which can influence some of these other factors here, these focus areas, which then in turn affect how long and how well we live. So again, just think about which are the neighborhoods in Missoula where you have access to affordable, healthy food. You have access to walkable, bikeable transportation. You have parks that are well lit and safe. Where's Karen? You have trees and green space that can help us with activity and mental health. You have access to quality schools, quality education. You have access to jobs that pay a livable wage. Those are the neighborhoods that support health. So I'm curious again, I want to see who's in the room. Give me a wave when the factor I read out is the factor where you live most. And if you live in several of them, go ahead and raise your hand several times. You know, if you were in different kinds of chairs, I'd have you stand up. Just have you give a wave. So if you primarily live or work in the space of health behaviors, okay, about a third of you. How about clinical care? All right, handful. Social and economic factors. Wow. Physical environment. You guys did a great job of getting a good mix here. That's awesome. So like what the gentleman said over here, there's a lot of intersection between all of these factors. And what we know is it takes all of us working together. So I love that you have such a good mix of folks here, because what we know is when we're solving complex problems like neighborhood conditions, poverty, it takes all of us working together. No one sector has the assets, the resources, the knowledge, the relationships that it takes to solve these complex problems. So what you see here is our action cycle, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but the reason I put it on here is really this piece right here. And I see a lot of different folks from these sectors here in the room, and I got to meet a few of you before we started. And what I also know is that you all have been mindful of having community members at the center of your community health improvement efforts. And that's so important that we're including community members that are most affected by the issues that we're addressing. So I love that Kai is going to be facilitating the panel after me to really hear from the experts in the neighborhoods. There's a saying that if you haven't heard it, it's good to keep in your mind. It's nothing about us without us. Some of you are nodding. So that's just a good reminder of, as we're working on community change, we want to be inclusive and make sure that community members are part of our work. So we talked about looking at a definition of health through the lens of community, I started to briefly touch on where we live, learn, work, and play matters to our health, and I think Lisa actually illustrated that better than anything I will do today. So I want to move into practical tools to support you in your efforts, starting with data. And what we know is communities that create a culture of health use data really wisely. They use data to help understand what's going on in community. They also use data to come up with a shared goal. Where do we want to end up together based on the data? And then they use the data also to continually look at how are we doing? How are we making progress? Where might we need to change course? So when we talk about data, in addition to the great local data that you have, County Health Rankings and Roadmaps provides rankings every year. And you can get to data for Missoula County a couple of ways. You can go to our website, and I always include our links in my slides, and you can share them later, and then you all can go right to the links. But you can get to Missoula by typing in Missoula County in the search box, or you can click on the map of Montana. When you click on the map of Montana, you'll see what we just talked about. So how are counties in Montana doing in terms of health outcomes and health factors? So on the left, you're seeing health outcomes, how long and how well counties are doing. And the lighter shaded counties are the counties that are performing better in terms of health outcomes. On the right, you see health factors. And we often will say that those things like health behaviors, clinical care, social and economic factors, and the physical environment are good predictors of what health is going to look like in the future. So health outcomes are a picture of today's health. Those health factors can be a good picture of what might happen in the future, depending on the action that you all take. So what I like to remind communities, I was actually doing a presentation in Helena, that's probably been close to 2 years ago, and someone from one of the lower ranked counties was upset. And what I like to remind folks is that every county, regardless of where you rank, has strengths to celebrate and to build on, and every county has challenges to address. And I think counties like Missoula sometimes can be challenging because when you look at your health outcome ranking, y'all rank pretty well. You're 6th in the state, so you're not the best, but you're certainly in the top. It's easy to say, oh, we must be fine in Missoula, we don't need to do anything. And what Lisa illustrated so well is that when you dig down and say, gosh, that might be true at the county level, but that's not true in every neighborhood. So we always say our data are like a checkup, an annual kind of check-in, and then you want to dig deeper and see what's going on in those different neighborhoods. So our data are a good starting point, a good conversation starter, hopefully a little nudge to action, and then your local data can be better around what's really going on and where you really need to emphasize and focus. So we have this amazing data and science team, you guys. They are so smart. I'm like, oh man, I wish I was that smart. But the reason they're so smart is not only do they do a great job of pulling data together and analyzing it, but they have done it in a way that's really accessible, and they've put together a number of tools to help you do what I just said, and that's to dig deeper. So as you're continuing this work and decide where your efforts are, where you want to place your efforts and what kinds of solutions you want to focus on, when you go to this link on our website, you'll see on the left here a number of different resources to help you utilize data. One of my favorites is this one that says Digging Deeper. There are just some really great questions for you to think about and reflect on as you're wanting to better understand your community and be as effective as you can be. So So just to kind of bring home the message of where we live matters, Lisa did a nice job of presenting some census data for you all in terms of obesity and so forth. This is actually a map. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has produced maps for a number of larger cities. And I know I live in a city that's similar to Missoula. It's hard to relate to someplace like Kansas City or Washington, D.C. But the reason I included this is it shows that just in a short distance, this might be one bus stop away, there's 14 years difference in terms of life expectancy. The other reason I included this is that this sort of data can be really compelling in terms of getting people to action. I was working with a team from Kansas City, and one of the team members took these maps. She was working with a youth coalition, and she had the kids line up on where their zip code was, and then she said, okay, you're going to live to 83. You're going to live to 69. You're going to live, and so on. And one of the young girls got really mad. She was, that's not true. I don't believe it. And so they had good conversation, and what Dina coached them to do is, don't just be mad. Let's take some action. Let's channel that and take some action. So this youth coalition is part of their community health improvement efforts. So the data can be really helpful in what John was talking about, and that's creating conditions for everyone to be healthy. Looking at our work with that lens of equity. So when you're doing your work, you want to think about what are the unique conditions, what are the unique circumstances that require different things. When we treat things with equality, we do the same, and that might not move the needle. We really have to be more focused on equity around where are those biggest gaps and what are the types of solutions that are going to help everyone live to their full potential. So you know where the gaps are, you got some good data, and you want to do something. We know that we want to do things that really have an impact, right? So I've been part of a lot of really good efforts. I've sat around a lot of coalition tables, and I know you guys are going to relate to this, when really well-meaning community members are saying, wouldn't it be cool if we did, wouldn't it be fun if, and there's no evidence to support that that wouldn't it be fun if would make a difference. And resources are such that we have to do more than the fun stuff now, and that's where evidence comes in. We know that communities that create a culture of health are committed to those evidence-informed policy, systems change, those kinds of things that are sustainable, so that when we all go away, the impact of those solutions continues on. Y'all are nodding. You know this stuff. So, again, you know, the academic piece. My colleagues, I've seen a lot of light bulbs go off with this pyramid, health impact pyramid. How many of you have seen this before? Okay, good. So it's new for a few of you. This is another way of saying that when we want to have an impact on population health, we need to focus on those interventions that are going to change those social and economic factors, change the conditions in the community, to do what Lisa said, make the healthy choice the easy choice. That doesn't mean that things like counseling and individual education aren't important. They're a good start, but they're not sufficient alone to move the needle the way that we all want to move the needle. That's what we get in this business for, right? We're here this morning because we want to see things change. So I was in Oklahoma, I don't know, several months ago, and there was a person from a really teeny tiny small county, and we were digging into this pyramid. We had more time than we have today, but we were digging into this pyramid a little bit deeper. And one of the strategies that hits at social and economic factors, and you can see a return on investment within 5 years, is early childhood education. And you're nodding. And the light bulb went off for her, and she said, you know what? In my county, there is no early childhood education. She went home, pulled a group of folks together, got on it, and guess what? In like less than 6 months, they now have early Head Start in their county. They didn't have it before, but she just found the right people, had the right information, took action, put some pressure on some folks, and now they have early childhood education, or early Head Start. So we want to use the evidence because it matters. It helps us make smarter investments. It helps us decide which track we want to take. We can't do everything, so it helps us inform our decisions. And then if you decide, hey, we want to do something more innovative, it can help you do that in a smart way, a more strategic way. So we have a resource to help you, and I think only 2 or 3 people raised their hands, so this is your homework, is to go check out what works for health. That picture of health that I showed you earlier, it serves as our framework for the data that we collect in terms of the rankings. It also serves as the framework for what strategies we look for. So if you saw on that picture of health, you fall under education and you want to know more about what are the strategies that can improve graduation rates, or what are the strategies around early childhood education, you can go into what works for health and do a search and find what are the sorts of strategies out there that have some evidence behind them. There are nearly 380 strategies in the database. We have a group of evidence analysts that's their job. Full-time, they're looking through the literature to say what works. This afternoon, Lisa and I are going to be working with a group, and we're going to dig into this deeper. So those of you who are part of that, your job is to share how to dig deeper into what works with health with others. But just to give you a sense of when you go into one of the strategies, this is what you'll see. So you'll get a brief description of what do we mean by this particular strategy. On the left, you'll see a thermometer that gives you an evidence rating, and there's 6 different levels of evidence. You can sort a number of different ways. I won't get into that now. You can also see what can we expect if we implement this intervention with fidelity. What kinds of outcomes might we expect? You can see more evidence of the effectiveness, and in some cases you can actually even link into the references. I've heard you all say that you want to make decisions about what impacts equity. How are we going to have reduce the gaps that we're seeing in our community? The evidence analysts look at the research now to say, what might this strategy do in terms of impact on disparities? And then finally, for those of you who are the boots on the ground doing the implementation, you'll love these 2 sections. There are actual examples and resources. So we have the data to tell you what's going on. We have evidence to help support you in what to do. And then we also have a lot of practical tools and guidance to help you with the implementation. So the data are only as useful as the action we take, right? Or the action that they inspire. One of the things, look at my public health friends, one of the concerns I have about the community health assessments and the community health improvement plans that we're doing is we're spending a heck of a lot of time, not all communities, a lot of communities are spending a heck of a lot of time assessing. So we have all this data, and we're not doing anything with it. I'm seeing, yeah. So taking some action. There's some really practical tools and guidance on our website to help you with implementation. I'm just going to do a quick nod to it. This is the link. It's called our Action Center. You can find tools and resources anywhere on the action cycle. And this is a common cycle that I know you all are following. You might use slightly different language, but whether you're assessing your assets, your needs, to you're evaluating your actions, there are really practical tools and resources for each of these steps. There are also really useful tools around collaboration and communication. In fact, if I had something like this when I was doing local coalition work, I would have been doing the happy dance, because collaboration is hard. You know, we were talking last night about the successes in Missoula, and when I worked with Kaya and her team, I was always like, you guys are so great. You're working so well together. You make a commitment and then you actually follow through and do it. And she was going, well, of course. Like, that's not the case everywhere. And so it's a big win when you've got good people working effectively together. If you run into bumps, or if you want to even do that better, there's a lot of really useful resources under our Work Together button. So today, you are going to be talking about, you've got this growth policy, you've got all this great work already going on. How do you have your direction and then really align those activities? And what are the solutions that are going to, best get you to the goal and the shared purpose that you all have? This button has a lot of really practical tools to help you do that in a systematic way. So I included this, and it seems to be something I'm doing a lot with a number of communities right now, is helping them say, okay, we're focusing in on tobacco. What are the solutions that make the most sense in our community? What are the things that make the most sense within the context of Missoula? So lastly, I want to share some examples of communities that are doing this great work. And I asked the Invest Health team last night, I said, what's been part of the learning as you've done this journey for the past 18 months? And they said, it's really been great to connect with other communities and to see what they're doing. And we hear that over and over. So the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation actually has a prize team that they're based in Madison, and they look across the country every year, put out an application for communities that want to get recognized for having a culture of health. These are I think we're up to 35 or 38 communities now. We just announced the 2017 winners. What do y'all notice about this map? There's a big hole in the Rocky Mountain region, right? So it is my personal mission, being a Colorado native and a mountain girl, I'm like, come on, folks, we need our parts of the country represented. So nudge, nudge, Missoula. This is your call to action. This shows you the 35 communities. The years. So the yellow ones are the current winners. The brand new winners. Yeah. So these are the things that these communities are doing really well. And these are the things that we've been talking about. They acknowledge that health is about more than health care, that those social and economic factors play a big role, and that there's a lot of intersection with all of the factors that influence health. They know that it takes all of us working together, all of us pulling our assets and resources together to make a culture of health. They have a commitment and a shared energy around equity. I love, John, that you opened with that. That's so great. They are committed to those long-term solutions. So looking at policy changes. You've got this great growth policy. How do you implement it in a way that's going to have an impact over time? They secure and make the best of their resources. I was talking with a team 2 days ago, and I said, as you reflect on what makes collaboration successful, what are those characteristics? And one of the team members said, I was part of an effort where it wasn't grant funded. We looked at all of our existing resources and we leveraged the assets that we had. And that work is still continuing. She has since moved on to a different role, but she said that work is sustainable because we were leveraging the resources that we have. And then finally, being committed to data and sharing progress and results. So I want to leave you with a little, hopefully, inspiration with a video. Are we doing good on time? Okay, good. And I'm sorry, if I enlarge this, it does really crazy things, so hopefully. This tells you a little bit about our winners from 2017 and how they're living a culture of health, hopefully. It worked earlier. That's always the case, isn't it? I usually don't include videos because of this. Okay. Let's try something else. Ah.
8 communities. 8 stories of hope and inspiration. For healthier people, families, and places. 8 communities defining health as a shared value.
Everyone's mission is aligning and we're all moving in the right direction.
There's a shared responsibility to make the community better.
You weave these elements together and then you've got a culture of health.
And when we do that, that's when change begins to happen.
By working together to build economic prosperity and ensure safety.
We're calling everyone who joins us a community wealth builder.
The better we train our workforce, the better they're going to be able to adapt to changing society.
We are looking at affordable housing. We are looking at education and job readiness.
We want to hear how the community wants us to police them.
By harnessing the collective power of partners and community members.
Our most valuable asset is our culture of collaboration.
We need to be bringing residents into our conversations and our decision-making process.
Collaboration across the sectors in the community has been critical.
By encouraging the next generation of leaders to drive change.
Where do you get new ideas from? You get new ideas from your youth.
Grooming young leaders is one of our #1 goals.
We've learned that our youth is really a catalyst for change.
These children are capable of great things.
And by creating equal opportunity for every person to fulfill their potential and thrive.
We believe deeply in inclusivity, and we want to include every sector of the community.
It really is one person at a time. Every person makes a huge difference.
Solutions to community problems have to come from the community itself.
The 8 Culture of Health Prize communities for 2017 are turning this vision into action.
So if you go to our website or to the Foundation's website, either one, you can access videos about all of the prize communities. And 2 that I think you might find interesting. One is Spokane. Spokane was a prize winner in 2014, and they as a community identified graduation rates at the time as where they wanted to emphasize to improve community health. And within a year or 2, they saw some great improvements. They've since gone on to work on some other things, but I thought since they're so close to you all and you can relate to them as a community, they're worth checking out. The other one, as we were talking about this last night, is we were talking about livable wage and how in Missoula you all are challenged with such a high cost of housing and then salaries that aren't matching that. So I believe it was the community in New Hampshire, and of course it just left me. Anyway, a big part of their culture of health work was around a livable wage campaign. So 2 videos you might want to check out. So in summary, we talked about where we live matters to our health, and we want to create conditions in every neighborhood where everyone has the opportunity to live to their full potential. We talked about health being more than health care and all those broad factors that influence health. We talked about how we have to do this together. And finally, as you continue your efforts, you can find practical tools and resources on our website. So you also have access to a coach. We have coaching available at no cost. If you come up with a question or you just want an outside thought partner, hit the Get Help button on our website, and your question will be connected to a coach, and you can access that at any point. We want to hear from you. And then finally, I just wish you all the best as you're embarking on your efforts to create a culture of health. I know that you have all of the conditions that you need to just you're already doing great work, so it's really about taking it to the next level. So I hope you'll keep in touch. There's lots of ways to keep in touch with us, and thanks for having me today. I love it when that happens.
Thank you so much, Jana. That was wonderful. Thank you, John Egan, for being with us. So we're going to have our panel discussion. Jana gave us a wonderful overview and tremendous resources, and talked about the importance of hearing from those with lived experience most affected by conditions in their neighborhood. So it's my pleasure to introduce my fellow Invest Health team member, Kaya Peterson, to introduce our panel.
Are they both on? Okay. Thank you so much, Jana. I can attest to the power of coaching. As Jana mentioned, we had a small team here working on manufactured housing and health, and Jana was our coach. And you just get stuck in a rut, or you're used to doing something one way, and sometimes that outside perspective, that really good question you needed just at the right moment, can catalyze some new action. So use that Get Help button and utilize coaching. It's an amazing free resource. So you guys can have a seat. We're pleased today to have Jesse, how do you say your last name? Nidek and Brad May with us. One of the things that we found in our Invest Health work, and just in talking with communities and folks doing this work across the country, is that really meaningful resident engagement is an extremely powerful and important part of this work. And we talk a lot in our work about not just doing for, but doing with. And so, you heard from Lisa during the TED Talk about some of the steps that our team took to try to engage residents in a meaningful way. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do more. It's not enough to just post a public meeting announcement that's going to be at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday if you really want residents to participate. We need to be out there building those relationships, knocking on doors. When you throw a party, you don't just send out an invitation and hope that people show up, right? You call your friends, you text them, you invite them, you get everybody excited about what you're working on and what you have in store. And it sounds really simple, but it's actually really powerful. So we want to hear today from residents who are really some of the best experts about what's going on in their neighborhoods. And I actually have a slide I want to have up here during our conversation so you guys have a little context for what we're talking about. So here we go. And as Lisa mentioned, our work was really focused on 3 of our lowest wealth neighborhoods in Missoula: the North Side, West Side neighborhood, the River Road neighborhood, and the Franklin to Fort neighborhood. And if you're not familiar with where those neighborhoods are, this gives you a little picture. The orange at the top of this slide is North Side, West Side. The yellow is River Road, and the pink is Franklin to Fort. So I want to have our panelists introduce themselves. They're going to tell you who they are and what neighborhood they're from, a little bit about their role on their neighborhood leadership teams. So Jesse, you want to get us started?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Jess Neidick. I'm in the yellow neighborhood, River Road. I guess Kaya sort of gave us a little prompt here, so I'll go through my notes real quick. I work here at the University of Montana, actually. I'm a director of an IT office for Student Affairs IT. What that basically means is we run IT for all of the offices of their student life. If you kind of think about that, we do housing, we run the health centers IT, dining's IT, so the non-academic areas of IT. I live in River Road again. I live on the Milwaukee Trail. If you're in town, you know what the Milwaukee Trail is. That came through my neighborhood, which is actually one of the things that sort of engaged me in neighborhood leadership and volunteerism in Missoula. Was they were planning to take away all the parking on our street side and put in some bulb outs and move my mailbox. And so I kind of was like, what's going on? What's this? And so that got me involved, and I've been involved for, I don't know, probably 5 years on neighborhood leadership team ever since. I moved into that neighborhood about 12 years ago. Was working on buying my house. Yeah, so I think that's most of what you asked us for.
And you're on the Neighborhood Leadership Council, and
Yeah.
how long have you been on that?
How many people are unfamiliar with what neighborhood leadership councils are? Okay, so briefly I'll talk about what neighborhood leadership councils are. So basically we're the ones who organize a monthly meeting of the neighborhood leadership team. We're volunteers. We work with the Missoula Office of Neighborhoods to plan neighborhood meetings. So that's what is also called a general meeting, where all of the neighborhood is brought in and we bring presenters in, such as the urban forester to talk about trees, or the Invest Health people to talk about the Invest Health process. And so we sort of organize the neighborhood on those things. We apply for neighborhood grants to do things like put a bench in a park, put lighting on trails or sidewalks, which we haven't been super successful with yet, but I'll talk more about that later. But basically we sort of organize the neighborhood and engage with the city government. Did I answer your question? I sort of lost track. Okay.
I'm Brad May. We moved to Missoula 3 years ago when we retired from our public teaching jobs in Topeka, Kansas. And so it has been a big cultural change, and I'm really glad to be here. We discovered Missoula when we were following the Lewis and Clark Trail in 2004 from the Kansas City, Topeka area all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And we passed through Missoula, and in the one evening and half a day we spent here, I realized there was something really, really special about this community. And that was just a quick first impression. But it was enough that we came back to Missoula several times and looked around and looked at real estate and bought a house and moved here 3 years ago. I became involved in the neighborhood council shortly after I got here because having served to the public as a public school teacher for 35 years and served my profession as a leader in the local teachers union, I just couldn't retire and do nothing. And I found out very quickly about the neighborhood councils and the leadership teams, and stood for election in July of 2015, right, just a few months after we got here.
So tell us each a little bit about your neighborhood. What's it like? What's happening there? And actually, before you go on, I did want to ask, so how many folks in the audience live in the Franklin to Fort neighborhood? Okay, great. And how many folks live in the River Road neighborhood? Just a couple? Okay, and how about North Side, West Side? Awesome. All right, so some of this will be familiar to you. Go ahead.
I experienced some real dumb luck in getting the house I did in the neighborhood I'm in. our plan was to come up here, buy a house, rent it out through a property manager until we finished our final 3 years towards retirement. And we engaged a realtor. She sent us out to look at 30 properties. We narrowed it down to a list of about 15 we wanted to actually go and inspect with her. And then we decided on this one. What I didn't realize, though, was how lucky I got with my location. I'm half a block from the bus route on Johnson Street. I'm just a few blocks from trails, bicycle trails, and the good food store. And it is so convenient to get to the heart of Missoula downtown from my location. I think about some of the other houses we looked at, and I would not have been as satisfied as I ended up being where I am. Frank, let's see, characteristics of the neighborhood? It's mixed. Housing prices are a lot higher than in Topeka. In Topeka, we had a house on a big lot, $50,000. We had to buy a duplex here on a small lot for $165,000, but it was worth it because of the quality of life. The mixed neighborhood, we have nice houses, a few single unit houses, but more and more is unit housing, and then there are the pockets of really trashy places, slum-like. But it's a place where I really enjoy being.
Yeah, so a couple of the things that we found as we were doing some asset mapping and the walkabouts and surveying were, one thing that's really interesting about the Franklin to Fort neighborhood is there are a lot of churches in that neighborhood. Pretty much every denomination. So as we think about community hubs and where spaces that people can meet and gather and that really promote community connectivity and engagement, that was a really unique feature of the Franklin to Fort neighborhood. I think another thing that's interesting about it is it's kind of split. 14th Street runs right through the middle of the neighborhood, so you end up with this dynamic where you have kind of the north side of the neighborhood has one dynamic and then the south side has another. And another thing to remember about this neighborhood is that there's a brand new elementary school there thanks to the school bond, which I think is another one of those community hubs that has a lot of potential. But it is a really mixed neighborhood, and it's also zoned for infill. So there's a lot of multifamily development going in where there used to be single-family housing, and I think a shift from home ownership to rental. So some of the dynamics to keep in mind as we think about these intersecting factors that create health in our neighborhoods. So Jesse, how about River Road neighborhood?
I would say very similar, and I'll try not to bleed too much into your next few subjects. But I would say we also are very mixed, lots of mostly residential, I would say. We do have some industrial. If you've been down Wyoming Street and you've seen sort of where Zombie Tools and the welders and the butcher was there for a short time, and now they're gone, but the yurt guys, that right along Wyoming, we have a kind of industrial sector right there. We have a lot of renters in our neighborhood, which creates a lot of problems when we started exploring things like sidewalks, because it's property owners that have to share that cost, and the property owners don't live there, so they don't care, and they're not going to pay for a sidewalk. But the renters who live there really want sidewalks. So I'm sort of, like I said, bleeding forward a little bit, but I think that's a big issue in our neighborhood. We are very mixed, lots of apartments, more apartments coming in. Corso is a big development that came in. I think we're pretty well zoned for infill as well. We do have some services. Do you want me to jump into that a little bit? Okay. So one of the shortcomings I think in our neighborhood is services. We have the good food store, which is great, but it's kind of I guess other than the brewery, kind of the only place to eat in our neighborhood right now. And one other noteworthy thing about our neighborhood that's a challenge is through traffic. Both for pedestrian bicyclists, but as well as vehicles. We have a lot of dead-end streets, a lot of cul-de-sacs. A lot of people really like that. It helps privacy. It helps, cut down on traffic speed and things like that. But it really makes it hard to get to the very few services we have, or even harder to get to the services that aren't in our neighborhood, and you have to travel outside of our neighborhood. Yeah, so I don't want to bleed too much into your next prompt.
No,
so.
that's great. That's great. Yeah, one thing that really struck me in learning more about the River Road neighborhood is that it's almost impossible to turn left to get out of it, right? You're surrounded by Russell, Reserve, Third, and the river. And with all the development that's been happening along Russell, the Wyoming Street corridor, I know there will eventually be a stoplight at Wyoming.
We've been promised that for a number of years.
Yeah. But if you've ever driven around that neighborhood and tried to turn left, good luck. You got to go around the block or around the river or around. And then the other thing that was kind of interesting is there aren't any mountain line bus routes that go through the neighborhood. They go on the perimeter streets. So U-Dash does go through the neighborhood, and folks can access that, but a lot of people don't know that U-Dash is available to them as neighborhood residents.
It's also only available during school session.
During school session, right. So some transportation challenges that have come up in our conversations there.
If I can chime in just real quick, you mentioned churches, and a lot of churches in Franklin before. I don't think we have hardly any in River Road. We were really excited. A lot of residents were really excited when the Salvation Army came in a few years ago, because that is a church that, and also sort of a community center that we were super excited about, because as I mentioned, we were lacking some services and places for social gatherings in our neighborhood.
Yeah, and you guys have the new food bank location there now too, with Spectrum co-located. Yeah, great. All right, so let's roll into that. We wanted to hear what are a couple of really great things or new positive things that are happening in your neighborhood, and then kind of contrasted with or paired with some challenges that you're seeing.
Well, one of the best things is our brand new park. Franklin to the Fort had been the least parked per capita neighborhood in the city, but last year the city, and Marilyn, can I give you credit for working on that deal to get purchase the property from Montana Rail Link at the corner of South and Johnson. It's a triangular shaped area, and I've been working with the park department as a neighborhood representative and developing a master plan. By the way, there will be an open house tonight to present the draft master plan from 6 to 8 tonight at Sovereign Hope Church at South or North and Johnson. Anyway, it's on the north end of the block that contains that park. And then we had the new equipment installed in Franklin Park during a little over a year ago as part of the bond that distributed improvements to all of the parks. And that is a very heavily used park. When I go by there during the day in the summer, there'll be big group gatherings or many families with their children there. It's well used, so I'm looking forward to seeing similar intensive use of the new MRL park.
We're just doing pros right now? Sure. So River Road, even though I did say we're lacking some services in our neighborhood, some of the businesses that have come in since I've been in the neighborhood have been great, namely Food Bank, which is sort of our newest resident. We also have Mud. I think I saw Ellie here earlier. Mud's been great, and Home Resource. Those are, I mean, I'm a little partial to sort of do-it-yourself stuff, but I think that that's a great sort of community, and our neighborhood, at least, if not the whole Missoula community, really sort of grasps onto those things and utilizes those things heavily. I always see people going up and down the trail with bikes or with just carrying stuff from either Mud and or Home Resource, and it always makes me smile because I do it too. I mentioned Salvation Army coming in. That was good. We also, I think a gem for us, and I helped with the volunteer build very early in my neighborhood volunteerism with the LaFrey Park. It's sort of a hidden little park in there. It has a great little playground. I would say for toddlers. I have a 2-year-old. She loves it. She wants to go every day, even when it's 29 degrees out. It's very highly utilized as well, even when it's 29 degrees out. There's parents taking their kids there, and I chat with them, and they come from all over the city because they say, this is so secretive, it's so nice and quiet in here. It's less good for older kids. I've seen a number of older kids kind of hang out for a few minutes and be like, nah, where else do we go? And you saw on Lisa's slide probably that we have a desire for some sports fields. It's a small park. There's a little bit of grass space to sort of play Frisbee or something, but if you want to play soccer, you want to play basketball, there's nothing there. So we could use a little bit more on the way of parks, but that I think is a little gem in our neighborhood that if you have a young one and you want to check it out, it's great in the summertime, and it's easily accessed by the trail if you can find it, because we have a bunch of dead-end streets. We also have community gardens. I just wanted to mention that briefly and say that we have a lot of community garden space in our neighborhood, and it's highly utilized and by the entire city. So I think that's great. Yeah.
Great, yeah. So you've seen the Garden City Harvest just finished their new facility on River Road. I know Jean is going to be here later, so kudos to their work there. And then I know, like you both mentioned, park deficits in these neighborhoods, and I know the Parks Department, Donna's here, and her team is really working on that. So Brad mentioned the new park that'll be going in on Johnson Street. Is that the right street? Down towards the mall. So if you're not aware of that, that's a big project that's in development, and will definitely bring some great outdoor resource to this neighborhood. How about some challenges?
I overlooked one park. We have a little jewel of a park at 8th and Grant. We call it a pocket park, and it's planted with native vegetation. And again, Marilyn Marler, I think, is responsible for that. It's just down the street from where you live, and Marilyn calls together neighborhood volunteers to remove weeds in the spring. It's a nice little park, but it's hard to find. It's at the intersection of 4 dead ends around 8th and Grant, but there's this neat little footbridge over the irrigation ditch. It's a little nature reserve right in the center of the city. And the other thing, Kai has already mentioned, we have the best brand new school in the city, Franklin Elementary School. And I work there as a substitute teacher occasionally, and it's really nice. Another positive. I think we have 3 bus routes that run directly through the neighborhood, but the Southgate Mall Transfer Center is within the neighborhood. So following 2 of those 3 routes, you get to the transfer center, and then you can go anywhere else in the city. And I think there's one route that bypasses the transfer center. Anyway, so good public transportation options.
So how about some challenges?
Okay. Streets and sidewalks. I think we probably have the most unpaved streets, and I live on an unpaved street, no sidewalk. It parallels a section of the irrigation ditch, and dust is a problem in the summer, and I hear about it all the time from my wife. The dust accumulates on the windowsills, and then in the winter we don't get plowed because it's not a hard surface, and we get the potholes, and then we don't get the leaf pickup either in the fall because they can't run the loaders on an unpaved surface. An advantage of it is that it's not a through street, and so it's actually a very wide pedestrian path. We see a lot of pedestrians walking past our house, and I don't know whether Kaya, you want me to go into the difficulties of getting a solution to that now or later?
So I already touched on some. I feel like lack of sidewalks I mentioned, and through traffic. Those are big ones in our neighborhood. Ever since I've been involved and we do neighborhood priorities, what can we work on for you? Those come up. Lighting is a big one since we got the trail through. A positive I forgot to mention is the Milwaukee Trail coming through our neighborhood. I was skeptical, as I sort of mentioned earlier. It sort of ate up my street in front of my house. I really love it though. I can bike all the way here to campus every day of the year, no matter what. Parks and Rec does a great job maintaining that trail, much more than the streets get plowed. The trail will get plowed. The trail's great, but as I think Lisa mentioned, lighting stops about a third of the way through the neighborhood. You're cruising over from this side of town to that side of town, and you're just like, wait, it just got dark. That's also where the signage, I think one of these pictures, this bottom one here, the signage is sort of off of the trail. You can see the trail over there. So if you're cruising down the trail, right where all those people are standing, I'm probably one of them, there's a turn in the trail, and it goes over about half a block and then back around some property. But if you just go straight, you end up in the trailer lot, parking lot, sort of dead end space in sort of Sketchville. Sorry if you live there. But, you know, I invite people over all the time. I'm like, oh, yeah, just take the trail. You come right over. That sign doesn't get you there because you never see that sign when you're going on the trail. You zip right into the trailer lot and you're like, what? And then I get a phone call and they're like, where am I? I'm like, back up, turn, go around the corner. So signage and just finding your way around our neighborhood, because there's no lights again here. No street lights, no trail lights. That's a huge issue in our neighborhood. That's the one that's sort of trumped everything else in the last couple of years when we do prioritizations, lack of lighting and just sort of wayfinding. Again, just briefly, lack of services. You know, hard to get food and stuff. If you don't want to pay or go to the good food store and you just want groceries, you got to go somewhere else and it's not close.
Great. So we heard from Lisa during the TED Talk about the high rates of obesity, the poor mental health, also some elevated levels of asthma in these neighborhoods. So as you're talking about these needs, these assets, how does that relate to health? What are you seeing that could really improve resident health as we're looking at trying to address those health outcomes? Or how are they related in your mind, or what you see with your neighbors?
Well, you mentioned asthma. Several times I've mentioned to people in neighborhood walkabouts and neighborhood meetings that I live on an unpaved street. This was a gravel surface, and eyebrows go up, and they say, well, maybe you should talk to the health department about that, because, but not your part of the health department, Lisa. I'm not sure what name they gave me. Yeah, perhaps. And so that is a health issue caused by my unpaved street. So I've tried several times to get to a solution. I've spoken to Brian Hensel, the city engineer, on the phone, Doug Harvey, who retired as construction projects manager, and his replacement, Troy Monroe, and about getting something done about it. And they say, well, it's not on the city's 5-year capital improvements plan. Well, I've been told that for 5 years, and that's a rotating list, and it's not ever going to be on that 5-year plan as far as most people think. But you can organize a special improvement district, SID. All you have to do is contact the neighbors on that block and get 50% of them to sign a petition, which will then impose a special property tax on all those people, those who signed and didn't sign, for the next 20 years. Well, how do I get a list? Nobody told me. And there are some absentee landlords. And some of the properties that abut my street actually have addresses on the adjoining block. So I'm on 6th Street, but my next door neighbor's backyard goes right up to 6th Street, but he lives on 7th, so he wouldn't be one to sign. So that's I feel like that's putting a lot of responsibility on me as an individual to do city work. The other thing is that if they were to come in and do anything, they would have to follow the Complete Streets policy. And I've been around the city website looking at Complete Street policy, and the city is really patting themselves on the back for adopting this policy, which is that any street improvement must be complete. Not just laying down pavement, but preparing a bed, gutters, sidewalks, and so forth, which is a very expensive proposition. And I wish the mayor was here right now to hear me.
some of your reps are here, so.
It would encroach, to do that would encroach on my parking space, and my neighbor's garden goes all the way up to what is an apparent right-of-way edge, but it actually is an incursion of about 20 feet into the city right-of-way. I don't know how that ever came about, but he probably owned the house and property before that neighborhood was acquired by the city, annexed by the city, and it was county at that time. So to even for me to push for a street improvement where they impose complete streets, I would lose his goodwill, because he'd lose his garden and his cherry tree and so forth. I've asked, can you just come in and lay down a top coat of asphalt? That would take care of the dust, that would take care of the potholes. But I keep being told, no, that would violate complete streets, and you would have to persuade persuade a majority of the city council to go along with that. And I've been told that historically the city council has turned down any requests like that. I still need to do a lot of research, but that's a catch-22 that we're involved in. It's a health issue because of the dust. You said asthma, but I can't get a simple solution. We have alleys in our neighborhood that have an asphalt coating that are in much better shape than my street.
So there's a lot that we heard in that story, I think. So one thing I want to call out is just Brad really going out and finding the right people, asking questions, trying to understand the current systems, right? That takes a lot of work, but it's also kind of an amazing example of resident engagement at a really high level. The other thing is this idea that some of these regulations or some of these ideals that we have about, this is the gold standard, this is what we want to do in our community, maybe aren't always the right thing in certain small situations. So how much room do we have in our community and in our decision making and in our policies to really be looking at that very local level to say what works here and what are we solving for? And then I think the third thing we heard is this tension between costs and solutions. And as you heard Lisa say, and as we all know from working on infrastructure projects, they can be very expensive. So where do we want to draw those lines as a community, and what are we really solving for? And then I just wanted to share one little anecdote talking about how that street isn't on the plan at least for 5 years, right? So when we started doing the sidewalk work, when we sat down with the planning folks to talk about which sidewalk segments are really going to have the most impact, if we can build 1 mile of sidewalk in these neighborhoods, where should those be? And we had this idea that, this is how planning works too, that you're going to try to use the areas where there's the most need for connectivity to local hubs, to existing plans around greenways, that kind of thing. But when we came up with our list and compared that to the 5 different plans that guide sidewalks in our community, none of those sidewalk segments were on the existing plans. And we had to figure out how to explain this to the funders, who all want to know, how does your project integrate with existing master plans and city plans? And we all kind of scratched our heads and said, well, this is bizarre. How did we get to such a different set of projects? And I think the aha moment was, well, we've never thought about it in terms of health equity before. That's never been a guiding part of the decision-making process for how we should prioritize projects in our community. And I just share that because that's part of our goal today, is to get everyone thinking about health equity and how do we use that as a decision point and as a definition of success when we're prioritizing projects and we're defining parameters for projects and regulations and policy as well. So thanks for sharing that great example, Brad. So Jesse, how about you?
Well, I'll share a couple things that I've thought on that. But first I want to highlight, and thank you for the point, Kaya, about sort of flexibility and compromise. I think that those are things that sometimes seem lacking when you're a volunteer trying to work with the city on a solution for your neighbors in your neighborhood or maybe yourself. I will give a couple quick examples. As I mentioned, lighting for the trail has been an issue. When it first came in, there was a lot of vandalism and theft on some homes that are literally on the trail on Justice Lane. And we were trying, the leadership team was struggling with the city to say, we really need lighting to go like another 2 blocks and like cover these homes. Or we need police to patrol, or we need something. We need more here because this is a constant problem. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. It's not in the plan. There's no funding, whatever the reason, rationale was. So what we ended up doing was applying for some small grants, and we sort of bent the rules and compromised, and we got the neighbors there to pay for the power if we bought them motion sensing lights and paid to get them installed on their homes so that they would trigger when somebody comes down the trail or when somebody leaves the trail into their property, it would trigger that light and shine on them. Don't tell all the rule makers that we did that, because I think we did I know. Nobody wake them up. I think we were told that we were kind of bending some rules there, but I just wanted to highlight that because I feel like that's the kind of flexibility and compromise that should not be bending the rules. It should be allowed and it should be encouraged, because I think that that's how we're going to get there. Maybe it's the do-it-yourselfer in me that wants to just like fix the problems, but I feel like they're within reach, and every time we start to reach across the table, we get our hands slapped, and it's like, come on, like it's right there, like let's just do it. So I kind of wanted to build on what you said, because I felt like we had a little bit of success there, albeit maybe outside of the lines a little bit. But I think, you know, some of you asked about health issues in our neighborhood. Again, lack of throughput and lack of public space. I mean, I see it all the time in my neighborhood, where children after dark, or even during the middle of summer, you know, in the evenings, they don't really have anywhere to go hang out. They don't have places to go play. They're on the trail in front of my house or down the street from my house, just like hanging out, which is literally also the road in some places. And so it's like, that's really not great, but that is what they have. And then it gets dark and there's no lighting. And so I think a lot of that is risky for the children. I think it also, or as it becomes risky, it pushes them out into less healthy, you know, less physical maybe activities, or less legal activities, who knows. But I really feel like, again, some low-hanging fruit seems to me to be like some lighting and some opportunities to engage our youth in better activities in our neighborhood, as well as adults too. Same problem. If it's a pain to get from your house to the good food store to buy a sandwich, you might not. You might just drive across town somewhere else, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you walk 6 blocks just because there's a irrigation ditch in between that you can't cross because there's a fence on it? Like, let's open up the fence. And we've tried to talk to some property owners about like making some pedestrian throughput through private property and getting some right-of-ways and stuff. It's been tough though, because rules and regulations and property owners don't live in the neighborhood and they don't see the value. So
I remember on our walkabout we saw the tennis court and the basketball court that was
that's right.
abandoned.
That's right.
And I was like, who owns this? And
Yeah. Yeah, so Lisa asked about a tennis court and a basketball court that we saw sort of abandoned and unmaintained. I think even the basketball hoop and stuff had like trees growing over it. And it's, again, on private property that was sort of a subdivision and has largely been, I like a term that you used, Brad, absent landlords or something. Yeah, absentee landlords. I think that's the case there. Nobody really owns it, or it's maybe in sort of shared space that had an HOA. That might be the case there. We have a number of those in our neighborhood too. HOA owned and maintained property, and the HOA is defunct and gone. Even though money maybe still gets paid into it by the homeowners, it doesn't do anything, and so those things are just sort of left to squalor. And you know, as much as I hate to say it or use that term, especially for our neighborhoods in our community, but as you said, Brad, it kind of pushes towards slum, and I'm afraid that the more infill we get without infrastructure, without maintenance, and without planning, we're going to push more and more towards that, where it's just lack of maintenance and less healthy.
So you heard a lot of things in both of these comments that hopefully you have that image in your head that Jana showed of the framework for health, right? All the different factors, the behavioral, the social and economic. I think we're hearing all of those pieces really in these neighborhoods and as part of what's impacting health and what's impacting equity in these neighborhoods. So we're going to shift gears a teeny bit. One thing we've been talking more and more about in our team, but I think also across this conversation about health equity, is social connectivity. I think there's growing evidence that social connectivity and social networks are a big contributor to people's health. So we think about, elderly folks living alone. Do they have neighbors who are looking out for them? People who are, new to town and trying to find a job, do they have a network of folks who are helping them to find new economic opportunities? So you guys are both part of your neighborhood councils, which is a really kind of core way that people can engage in their neighborhoods. What else can you tell us about social connectivity in your neighborhoods? Do neighbors know each other? Is it, what's the dynamic there?
I'll start if that's all right, Brad. I'll say it's difficult, especially in our neighborhood, because I think a big factor, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think a big factor is social spaces, places where people can congregate and chat and hang out that are sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, neighborhoodly. Like I said, at LaFrey Park, that seems like one of those areas in our neighborhood where it's like this sort of secretive little private, ooh, this is our place. But the more I talk to people, they're like, no, I live in the South Hills. I just come down here because the South Hills, we don't really have parks like this, so I bring my kid down here. And that's fine, and I meet those people, but it's tough to, I think your question is more how do you engage your neighbors and get to know the person who lives 2 houses down. It's tough. Most of the people that I know in my neighborhood that I've met at neighborhood meetings, largely because we give them food. We say, hey, we're having a barbecue in the park. Come and have free food. And then I work to meet people, But without those sort of forced engagements, it's really tough in our neighborhood, at least, I will say. I would say in other communities, sort of like the campus or others that I've been prior to where I live now, those locations, if there's a park, if there's places for social events, picnics, birthday parties, whatever it ends up being, that are sort of adopted by the neighborhood, is like, this is our restaurant, this is our place to hang out, this is our coffee shop. You get to know people through there. We just don't have those services in our neighborhood to feed that sort of community.
I've had to look beyond the neighborhood too. When we were getting ready to move from Topeka to here, my wife kept saying, but we don't know anybody. Well, I did internet research. I used Google and Meetup to find some organizations that had offered contact with people of similar interests, the Audubon Society and the Secular Society. And so that's how we have expanded our circle of acquaintances, because we didn't know anybody when we came up here. And some of those acquaintances are developing into true friendships. But, and then through the neighborhood council, I serve on committees, a subcommittee of the art committee, public art committee, the urban reforestation committee, and the MRL park planning committee. But those actually expand beyond the neighborhood. So I don't know, I just haven't made a whole lot of acquaintances in the neighborhood other than direct contact with people on my leadership team. But that's fine, because Missoula has so much to offer.
If you seek it out, you find it. Yeah. So one of the things that I do in my work with NeighborWorks is I work with residents who live in trailer parks. And we help folks form cooperatives and buy their land. So there's actually a resident-owned community in the River Road neighborhood. There's also one out past the airport. And I just want to make a little connection here. So a lot of our conversation today is about the built environment and health, and making this connection between community development and health. I think that there are a lot of really important infrastructure and built environment activities that we all need to be working on as a community. But I think we need to be pairing that with social connectivity and social engagement. And that's part of the idea of this panel, to get people thinking about this. In these trailer park communities, the philosophy is, if you help people preserve their land and preserve their housing, and you give them the opportunity to build a financial and a governance structure that makes it easy for them to participate, then you build a foundation from which you can create a lot more change. So once folks purchase their land, and this is just an example, once they purchase their land, they build a membership base, they elect a local board of directors. When you drive by those communities, they still have old homes. They still have roofs that are leaking. But what you may not know is those residents are extremely engaged in their community, And as soon as they become resident-owned, they have started building decks and replacing windows and organizing community gardens and advocating for more resources for infrastructure in their communities. So that change is slow. You may not see the change right away. You may still say, wow, that's really run down. That doesn't look high quality. That looks unhealthy. But there's an underlying health change happening there because of the community connectivity and the social engagement. And we hear over and over again in those communities, and I think when we talk to folks who are engaged in their neighborhood councils, I know my neighbors. And what's fascinating to me about that is it is universally assumed that that is a good thing, right? They are all arguing with each other about the dog barking next door, but they will still tell you, I know my neighbors, and their eyes light up, and it's a shared value that we hold that I think is sometimes hard to find and hard to engage, but is a really important and powerful part of this conversation, pairing our built environment and our health equity with social engagement and real meaningful ways to have residents being part of the work we're doing. So we just wanted to end the conversation today with a little bit of insight from our resident experts about how we in this room can better engage in these neighborhoods and others across Missoula. So what works? How can we better work with residents and really do what we're saying we want to do here, which is be working with, not just for?
As I sort of, I guess, got on my soapbox earlier, I think flexibility and collaboration should be a focal point. I would also encourage, reach out to the leadership teams. Most of the neighborhood councils in Missoula have functioning and active neighborhood leadership teams, which can engage you with general meetings if you need a bigger audience, if you need to get more neighborhood input. I would say at least our neighborhood, and I think most of them meet almost every month. Does yours meet almost every month? I say that, and we're skipping this month and next because of holidays, but we'll be meeting at the beginning of January. I think bring us opportunities, bring us ideas. Being on the leadership team for a number of years, I won't say our leadership team has ever really had a lack or a void of ideas and, hey, what's new? I think somebody commented on that earlier, but like, what's the data to back it? Like, we have all those great ideas, but it is tedious and sometimes cumbersome to try and figure out who in the city do we need to talk to and what are we going to ask them? Like, we can't just go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a whatever? Because often when we do that, we find that, yeah, that's nice, it's not on the plan. Or do you have funding for that? Because we don't. And so that immediately sort of deflates those balloons of inspiration. And so I would say, even if you guys are having, and I assume you're asking from the organization side coming to the community side, if the organizations, if the city, if the health department, whoever it is, has an idea, or even if it's just a thought, email us. Email the leadership team, say, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you guys think? And I would wager that somebody will engage back. Somebody will say, yeah, let's talk. When can we get coffee? Or can you come to our next meeting? And I think never be afraid to reach out to us. One thing to remember is we're all volunteers. We're all likely busy with other life. And so this is like an add-on. And so it doesn't usually take our full focus. If it's your job and it's taking your full focus for 40 hours a week or however long it is, feel free to pull us in for those other few hours to help. And I think we will. So yeah, I guess reach out and also be willing to be flexible and collaborate.
Yeah, what Jesse said. I just to clarify, though, the leadership team members are elected at a public meeting of the neighborhood council, and we are elected city officials. And our neighborhood... We're not paid, though. Not paid. No, we're volunteers. And all of our meetings are public. Leadership team meetings are public. The agenda for the leadership team meeting is posted on the city website. The minutes from the meetings are posted on the city website. Anybody can attend those meetings. In fact, that's how I got in. I was new in town. I knew there was a neighborhood council. I found out where their leadership team meetings were. I attended 3 LT meetings, and the following July, I was elected. So they go to those team meetings, and that's another way of getting acquainted and getting into the power structure.
I would just note, if you don't know how to reach out to the neighborhoods or even which neighborhood to reach out to, work with Jane in the Office of Neighborhoods. She's great. She'll hook you up with the right people, and she's a really good conduit between leadership teams and organizations.
So hopefully this has given you some insight into some of the real grassroots and local work, how to engage residents, different things to think about as we figure out what works for Missoula. So let's thank our panelists. Thank you guys so much. Oh yeah, we did have a third panelist, but she wasn't able to make it today. So we missed North Side, West Side was going to be represented today. But
What might be some of the concerns from your walkabout?
so North Side, West Side, some of the concerns from the walkabout, some of the same things you've heard here, and you all who live in those neighborhoods know, difficulty with connectivity, safe routes to school, sidewalks, and then connectivity from those neighborhoods to the rest of the city. Those are some of the things that we heard. So, are you transitioning? Thanks.
I just wanted to add, I do live on the north side, west side, and so, and wearing the resident hat of being there since 1994, I think that safety is a concern of the neighborhood with the location, as well as connectivity. We have the railroad tracks that divides north side, west side, and Scott Street Bridge is hard to navigate. It's pretty up and down. And for 5 years, we didn't have a light underneath a bridge on our safe routes to school. But guess what? We have a light now. Go invest health. So I'm just saying, make that phone call. It works. Advocate for your neighborhood. All right.
Well, thank you, Kaya and panel. Really appreciate it. I think Jesse and Brad, when they list the assets in their neighborhood, they should list themselves. So. And I'm going to start using the word neighborhoodly, because I think that's such a great concept of, we need gathering spaces. We need places where people can connect. And we need lighting. I can't help but notice the irony that in at least one of our neighborhoods, we're lighting bridges because they look pretty. And we need to light, trails and places there where people really need them for navigation and safety.